wherever you're listening or watching Radio Afinju. The time is 3 p.m.
Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfíjù. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfíjù. Rédíò. Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfíjù. Lórí WhatsApp. Àfíjù. Instagram. Àfíjù. Facebook. Àfíjù. Lórí X. Àfíjù. Lórí YouTube. Àfíjù. Lórí TikTok. Àfíjù. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfíjù. Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfíjù. Rédíò. Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ 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 Àfíjù. Rédíò Àfíjù. Rédíò Àfíjù. Rédíò Àfíjù.
Stay informed with news on Radio Afinju.
First, a look at the highlights. TED Fund tells federal government to grant Nigerian universities absolute autonomy. Sudan's RSF ally signed charter to form parallel government, two signatories say. Least accomplishments or resign, Musk tells U.S. federal workers. Good afternoon and welcome to the World News on Radio Afinju. My name is Pearl Durotoye. The news in detail. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TED Fund, has called on the federal government to abolish its existing policy on Nigerian universities and grant them complete autonomy. The Executive Secretary of TED Fund, Sonny Echono, made this appeal over the weekend during the ninth convocation ceremony of the Federal University Oyekiti Fuoye. Echono expressed concern over the government's control of universities despite the provisions of the Universities Autonomy Act No. 1 of 2007, which allows universities to govern themselves and manage their finances, among other responsibilities. He emphasized that the primary goal of the Act is to free universities from the bureaucratic constraints of the civil service, enabling university governing councils to exercise their powers and perform their functions without undue external influence or interference. The Executive Secretary pointed out that government interference, particularly through the Constitution and the dissolution of governing councils, has impeded universities' ability to establish independent appeal processes. Osun State Independent Electoral Commission, OSIEC, has officially presented a certificate of return to all the newly elected local government chairmen in the just concluded local government elections in the state. The certificate presentation was carried out by the chairman of the commission, Ashim Abioye, at the State Government House. It should be noted that the People's Democratic Party, PDP, cleared all 30 local government chairmanship and 332 councillorship seats in the just concluded 2025 local government election in Osun State. The Association of Telecommunications Companies of Nigeria, ATCON, has raised an urgent alarm over a looming network blackout in Lagos and Ogun states due to a diesel supply crisis caused by an indefinite strike by the petroleum tanker drivers, a branch of the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG. ATCOM President Tony Emoikpere warned that the ongoing fuel supply disruption is pushing many telecom-based stations to the brink of shutdown, posing a serious risk to millions of mobile and internet users in the region. He cautioned that if urgent action is not taken, the situation could escalate into a full-blown network blackout, hereby disrupting mobile and internet services, business operations, emergency response systems, and essentially daily communications. Atkan is appealing to the governors of Lagos and Ogun states to intervene immediately by facilitating the release of diesel from depots to telecom operators. The association also urged security agencies and petroleum unions to resolve the crisis swiftly to safeguard Nigeria's connectivity and economic stability. Apex Igbo Socio-Cultural Organization, Ohaneze Ndigbo, has commended former military president General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida for his bold and historic assertion that the January 1966 coup d'etat was not an Igbo coup. Ohaneze said this courageous acknowledgement stands as a crucial milestone in altering the narrative that has unjustly painted the Igbo people as antagonists within the broader scope of Nigeria's tumultuous political landscape. The Igbo body stated that IBB's revelation on the 1966 coup signals a potential cessation of the entrenched vindictiveness, cruelty, and deep-seated animosities directed towards the Igbo nation over the past 5 decades. In a statement issued earlier today by Ohaneze's factional Deputy President General Okechukwu Isiguzoro, the group noted that the ramifications of the erroneous classification of the January 1966 coup as an Igbo insurrection have been profoundly detrimental, leading to catastrophic consequences not only during the tumultuous period but extending into the present day. According to the statement, this mischaracterization incited the July 1966 counter coup against the then military head of state of Igbo descent and precipitated violent uprisings targeting Igbo citizens residing in northern Nigeria, 7 seats of the squad that ultimately contributed to the tragic Biafra War, in which 3 million Igbos, predominantly women and children, lost their lives. A 24-year-old Thai national, Patapi Wimonant, has been arrested by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency while attempting to smuggle 43 parcels of Canadian Loud, a synthetic strain of cannabis weighing 46.6 kilograms, into Nigeria. The agency's Director of Media and Advocacy, Femi Babafemi, disclosed this in a statement released earlier today. In a related operation, NDLEA officials also thwarted an attempt by a drug syndicate to ship 68 parcels of Ghanaian Loud weighing 42.2 kg to London. The drugs were cleverly concealed within the walls of crated cartons at the airport's export shed. At the Port Harcourt complex in Onne, Rivers State, NDLEA officers intercepted 49 cartons containing 49,000 pills of Tamol, a brand of Tramadol 225 milligrams, during a joint examination with the Nigeria Customs Service and other security agencies on Thursday, February 20th. In other raids across the country, in Nasarawa State, 2 suspects, Bello Adamu, 40 years old, and Pius Azuka, 42 years old, were arrested in Kokona Kefi with 517 kilograms of skunk on Saturday, February 22nd. Away from Nigeria, signatories Al-Hadi Idris and Ibrahim Al-Migani told newsmen Sudan's Rapid Support Forces signed a charter with allied political and armed groups late on Saturday to establish a government of peace and unity. Among the signatories to the charter is Abdelaziz Al-Hilu, a powerful rebel leader who controls vast swaths of territory and troops in South Kordofan state, and who has demanded that Sudan embrace secularism. Such a government, which has already drawn concern from the United Nations, is not expected to receive widespread recognition, but is a further sign of a splintering of the country during a civil war that has lasted almost 2 years. The RSF has seized most of the western Darfur region and parts of the Kordofan region in the war, but is being pushed back from central Sudan by the Sudanese army, which has condemned the formation of a parallel government. Idris, a former official and head of an armed group, said the government's formation will be announced from inside the country in the coming days. In Asia, China's Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Qian said earlier today that Australian complaints over recent Chinese live-fire naval drills in international waters between Australia and New Zealand were hyped up and inconsistent with the facts. Australia Defense Minister Richard Marles said on Saturday that Beijing had failed to give satisfactory reasons for what he called inadequate notice for live-fire drills a day earlier, which he said has forced airlines to divert flights. Qian said in a post from the Chinese Defense Ministry that China has issued repeated safety notices in advance and that its actions complied with international law and did not affect aviation flight safety. New Zealand said on Saturday it had also observed the Chinese Navy conducting a second day of live-fire exercises and that it was monitoring a fleet of Chinese vessels. In the United Kingdom, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has condemned the British government's decision to cancel the planned increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030, calling it indefensible amid global rising threats. In a letter dated February 22, 2025, Badenoch accused Prime Minister Keir Starmer of failing to act decisively on national security, warning that these decisions cannot be delayed. She argued that with Russia escalating its aggression and former U.S. President Donald Trump insisting that NATO allies contribute more, Britain risks losing its leadership position in global security. In Europe, the Ukrainian Air Force confirmed today that no fewer than 267 drones were launched into Ukraine on Saturday night by Russia. The incident occurred amid preparations by both nations to mark 3 years since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion of its western neighbor. According to reports, the 267 drone attacks were the largest of such bombardments, breaking the previous record of 193 drones set in a December attack. The Ukrainian Air Force said in a statement on its Telegram channel that it shot down 138 Shahed attack drones, while 119 others were lost in flight. The Odessa military administration also reported that at least 3 people were injured by a drone strike. Emergency services said that 1 person was also injured in Zaporizhia. Still in Europe, Pope Francis had a peaceful night and was rested, the Vatican said, after revealing on Saturday that his condition continues to be critical. The pontiff was described as more unwell than on Friday, and he has received blood transfusions as he suffers from a prolonged asthma-like respiratory crisis. The 88-year-old is being treated for pneumonia in both lungs at the Gemelli Hospital in Rome. The Vatican said the blood transfusions were deemed necessary due to a low platelet count associated with anemia. It said the Roman Catholic leader was allowed in his armchair, but required a high flow of oxygen, and his prognosis remains guarded. In the Americas, U.S. government workers received an email on Saturday afternoon asking them to list their accomplishments from the past week or resign, the latest development in the Trump administration's efforts to scale back the federal workforce. The email came after Trump's billionaire confidant, Elon Musk, posted on X that employees would shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. He wrote that failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Musk, as the head of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, has been leading an outside effort to aggressively curtail government spending through funding cuts and firings. The email arrived in inboxes shortly after Trump spoke at the Conservative Political Action Conference. The messages came with the subject line, "What did you do last week?" from a sender listed as HR. The Office of Personnel Management, the federal government's human resource agency, in a statement to reporters, confirmed the email was authentic. In the Middle East, tens of thousands of people in Lebanon are paying their last respects to Hezbollah's late leader, Hassan Nasrallah, who was killed in an Israeli attack in the southern suburbs of the capital, Beirut, last September. The public funeral, delayed for security reasons, began at 1:00 p.m. local time today at Beirut's Camille Chamoun Sports City Stadium, which has a capacity of about 50,000 people. Hezbollah organizers have installed thousands of extra seats on the pitch and many more outside, where mourners will be able to follow the ceremony on a giant screen. In the run-up to the funeral, giant portraits of Nasrallah and his heir apparent Hashem Safieddin, killed in another Israeli air attack a week later, have been plastered on walls and bridges across South Beirut. Still in the Middle East, Israel says it is expanding its military offensive across the occupied West Bank and preparing for troops to remain in some refugee camps for the next year. Defense Minister Israel Katz earlier today said the army had evacuated 3 refugee camps in the northern West Bank and had been ordered to remain there to prevent the return of Palestinian residents. For more than a month, Israeli forces have been raiding Palestinian homes and using bulldozers to destroy critical infrastructure. Their assaults have largely focused on Jenin and Tulkarem. The Israeli army said tanks have been deployed in Jenin for the first time in the West Bank since the end of the second Intifada or uprising in 2005. Nabil Abu Rudaine, spokesman for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, condemned the decision to deploy tanks in the northern West Bank. Since January 19th, when the Israel-Hamas ceasefire came into effect in the Gaza Strip, Jenin and its adjoining refugee camp have been under Israeli siege, and at least 27 Palestinians have been killed there. Now talking sports, former Arsenal and Manchester United striker Robin van Persie has been appointed as Feyenoord's new head coach. The 41-year-old, who retired from playing in 2019, has left fellow Dutch side Heerenveen to take charge of the club he had 2 spells at as a player, making 122 appearances for them and scoring 46 goals. Van Persie was also assistant coach at Feyenoord under Dick Advocaat and worked with the youth teams before taking charge of Heerenveen in May last year. The former Netherlands international leaves the club 9th in the Eredivisie after winning 7 of his 23 games in charge. Van Persie has signed a contract until 2027 and will be assisted by Rini Hake, who was previously part of Erik ten Hag's coaching staff of Manchester United. Before we go, here again are the highlights. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, has called on the federal government to abolish its existing policy on Nigerian universities and grant them complete autonomy. Elsewhere, signatories Al-Hadi Idris and Ibrahim Al-Migani told newsmen Sudan's Rapid Support Forces signed a charter with allied political and armed groups late on Saturday to establish a government of peace and unity. In the Americas, U.S. government workers received an email on Saturday afternoon asking them to list their accomplishments from the past week or resign, the latest development in the Trump administration's efforts to scale back the federal workforce. That was the World News on Radio Afinju. To view our channel, please follow us on Facebook, X and YouTube at Radio Afinju. My name is Durotoye. Thanks for listening. Good afternoon.